March 9th, 1945. An American infantry unit was less than 10 minutes away from being wiped out. They didn't know it. They couldn't see it. And they were walking straight toward it. The road ahead looked empty, calm, quiet, harmless. But that calm was a lie. Hidden along the tree line were German machine gun teams, already in position. Mines buried beneath wet soil. Rifles trained on a narrow bend in the road where the Americans were supposed to slow down. The ambush was ready. Orders had already been given. All that remained was time. And the only man who knew this, the only man who could stop it, was a captured German prisoner of war walking at the back of the American column. If he stayed silent, the ambush would succeed exactly as planned. If he spoke, he would betray his own unit and likely die for it. At that moment, the prisoner stopped walking. The road cut through a dense stretch of western Germany, flanked by tall pines that blocked most of the daylight. Recent rain had softened the ground. Boots sank slightly with every step. The air smelled of wet earth and pine needles. The American soldiers moved cautiously, rifles low but hands tight around the stocks. According to command, this area had already been cleared. German resistance was believed to be broken. The men didn't trust that report. They had learned the hard way that war rarely followed paperwork. At the rear of the column walked the prisoner. His helmet was gone. His uniform was torn, insignia ripped away. Mud stained his trousers and boots. His hands were bound in front of him with rough rope. He had been captured the previous night during a brief firefight near the forest edge. Since then, he hadn't said a word. Not when he was searched, not when he was questioned, not during the long march through the trees. To the Americans, he was just another defeated enemy. Silent, compliant, waiting to be handed over once the road was secured. As the unit advanced, the road narrowed. The trees pressed closer together. Sound seemed to fade. Even the birds were quiet. That silence bothered the men more than gunfire ever did. Then the prisoner stopped. At first, the guards thought he had stumbled. One of them tugged on the rope. "Move!" The prisoner didn't react. The guard pulled harder. "Move!" Still nothing. Slowly, the prisoner lifted his head. His eyes were fixed straight ahead. Not on the guards, not on the soldiers, but on the dark bend in the road where the forest thickened. When he spoke, his voice was low, strained, and broken by a heavy accent. "You must stop." The words cut through the silence. The entire column froze. The lieutenant turned sharply, irritation flashing across his face. Prisoners didn't speak unless spoken to. "What did he say?" he asked. One guard hesitated. "He says we need to stop, sir." The lieutenant stepped toward the prisoner. "Why?" The German swallowed. His eyes never left the trees ahead. "If you go forward," he said slowly, choosing each word with care, "you will be killed." The air changed instantly. Rifles came up. A safety clicked off. The lieutenant stared at the prisoner, searching his face for panic, for desperation, for the look of a man bargaining for his life. He didn't see it. What he saw instead was something far more unsettling: certainty. "Explain," the lieutenant said. The POW took a breath. "My unit is waiting," he said. "Machine guns. Mines. They are ready." A murmur rippled through the line. Some soldiers scoffed quietly. Others tightened their grip on their weapons. The lieutenant leaned closer. "And why?" he asked coldly. "Would you warn us?" For a moment, the prisoner didn't answer. His shoulders sagged slightly, as if the weight of the decision had finally caught up to him. Then he spoke. "Because this is how my brother died," he said. Same forest, same silence. No one spoke. The lieutenant stepped back and looked down the road. Ahead, the bend disappeared into shadow. Nothing moved, nothing fired. If the prisoner was lying, stopping the advance would waste time and invite questions from command. If he was telling the truth, moving forward would walk his men straight into a killing zone. Somewhere ahead, unseen, German soldiers waited with fingers on triggers, wondering why the Americans had slowed. The lieutenant raised his hand. The column halted, and in the trees ahead, the ambush began to unravel. Not with gunfire, but with doubt. March 9th, 1945. The lieutenant didn't respond immediately. He stood still in the center of the road, eyes fixed on the bend ahead, letting the silence stretch longer than anyone liked. If the prisoner was lying, this delay would cost time. If he was telling the truth, every second mattered. He motioned for two soldiers to pull the POW a few yards into the trees, just far enough that the rest of the column couldn't hear clearly. "If you're lying," the lieutenant said quietly, "you'll be shot." The prisoner nodded once. "I know." That answer unsettled him. Most prisoners begged. Some tried to bargain. Some lied badly. This man did none of those things. The POW spoke slowly, carefully choosing words in a language that wasn't his own. His unit had fallen back through the forest the night before, retreating under cover of darkness. Before leaving, they prepared the road for an ambush meant to stop the American advance completely. Mines buried under wet soil, close enough together that no vehicle could pass safely. Machine gun teams positioned on both sides of the road, covering overlapping fields of fire. Orders given not to shoot early, not to waste ammunition, but to wait until the Americans reached the narrow bend. "They will wait," the POW said, "until you slow down." The lieutenant watched his face closely. No shaking hands, no frantic breathing, no signs of desperation. This wasn't a story made up on the spot. This was memory. "Why tell us?" the lieutenant asked again. The prisoner looked down at the ground, silent for several seconds. "My brother," he said finally. "He was killed like this." The words landed heavier than expected. The POW explained in fragments. A patrol, a forest road, silence, then gunfire from both sides. No warning, no time to run. "They did not have time," he said. The lieutenant turned away and walked back toward the column. The men were watching him closely. Soldiers always noticed when something was wrong. He raised his hand. "Halt," he ordered. The column stopped immediately. Men stepped off the road, spreading out into defensive positions. Rifles came up. Radios crackled softly as messages were passed back. The lieutenant called the engineers forward. If the prisoner was lying, they would know soon enough. If he was telling the truth, the road ahead was already a grave waiting to be filled. The engineers moved forward cautiously, probing the road inch by inch. The first mine was discovered less than 20 yards ahead, then another, then another. Each one was carefully marked, uncovered just enough to confirm its presence. The sheer number of them told a clear story. This wasn't a token defense. It was a carefully prepared killing zone. The lieutenant exhaled slowly. The prisoner had told the truth. He ordered a flanking maneuver instead of advancing down the road. American squads began moving through the trees, spreading wide, far wider than standard doctrine allowed. It was risky. If spotted early, they would be exposed. But it was the only option. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then the first shots rang out. Not from the road, but from the trees. American rifle fire tore through brush and branches, catching the German ambush teams completely off guard. Machine gunners who had been waiting for targets in front of them now found themselves under fire from the sides. Some tried to swing their guns around. Others fired blindly. A few ran. One German machine gun position on higher ground managed to return fire, pinning several Americans behind fallen logs. Bullets snapped overhead, tearing through dirt and bark. The lieutenant shouted orders over the noise, shifting squads forward inch by inch. Engineers continued marking mines as fast as they could. For a moment, the fight hung in the balance. Then one American squad managed to circle wide enough to come up behind a machine gun position that was still focused on the road. They opened fire at close range. The gun fell silent. Within minutes, the remaining German positions collapsed. Some surrendered. Others fled deeper into the forest. The ambush was finished. The road was secured. Several American soldiers stood silently, staring at the bend where they would have slowed. The exact spot where the ambush was meant to begin. No one said it out loud, but everyone understood how close it had been. After the last mine was removed, the forest began to look ordinary again. Smoke drifted away. Weapons were lowered. The noise of battle faded into memory. The ambush was over. The lieutenant walked over to the prisoner. "You saved my men," he said. The POW didn't answer. "You know what your own side would call this," the lieutenant continued. The prisoner nodded. "I know." There was no pride in his voice, no relief, only acceptance. Official reports later credited reconnaissance for discovering the ambush. That was the language command preferred. Clean, impersonal, safe. There was no mention of a prisoner, no mention of a warning, no mention of a decision that saved dozens of lives. The POW was transferred later that day. What happened to him afterward is unclear. Like many prisoners in the final months of the war, he disappeared into the system. But among the American soldiers who would have walked into that kill zone, the truth stayed alive. They spoke about it quietly, never in reports, never in letters home, only in passing moments when the war slowed just enough to remember. One soldier later wrote in his journal, "That German saved us. War didn't make him good, but it didn't finish him either." Wars are remembered for their largest moments, battles, offensives, victories. But history is also shaped by moments where nothing explodes, where no charge is ordered, where people live because someone chose to speak. This was one of those moments, a moment decided not by firepower, but by restraint. If stories like this matter to you, and if moments like these deserve to be remembered, you can support this channel by liking and subscribing. And if you'd like to help keep long-form war stories alive, you can support through a donation. Connect on Instagram.